Hello, welcome to our webinar today. We're going to discuss about Istio 110, what is new. Let me quickly introduce myself. So I'm the director of open source with solo.io. I've been contributing to Istio for pretty much at the beginning of the project. So it's been 4 years. I have a lot of patents to my name. I also wrote a book, Istio Explained. Sam, could you introduce yourself?
Yeah, so I'm Sam. I'm a software engineer at Google, and I pretty much just work on all things Istio related. And I was a release manager for 110. So
That's awesome. We are very excited to have Sam today here. Imagine who would know more about Istio 110 than Sam. So before we get started, I want to quickly mention yesterday was Istio's birthday. I actually wrote a blog about happy birthday, Istio. You probably see a lot of tweets about Istio. How do you win a free swag? So we definitely encourage you to participate. Istio Turn 4 on Twitter. And let us know, what is your contribution to the Istio project? What the impact the Istio have made to you? So we're here today to talk about Istio 110. I want to take a minute to thank the entire Istio community to make 110 the best release, in my opinion, out of all the Istio releases. Sam, could you take everyone through the upgrade improvements in 110?
yeah, sure. So upgrades have been like a big pain point in Istio up to now, and we've heard the feedback, and we've been investing a lot of resources into making them better. So the first thing is we're now supporting jumping straight from 1.8 to 110. So previously, if you wanted to upgrade from 1.8 to 110, you pretty much had to go 1.8, 1.9, 110. And now we're testing these direct upgrades. So hopefully this will make it easier for you to, get on the newer versions with the bug fixes and new features.
Yeah, that's huge.
Yeah, and then hopefully, eventually we'll even expand how far you can jump. But for now, just 2 versions. Yeah, and then we have the experimental pre-check command. So this is another really nice thing. It'll help you kind of upgrade without, being too worried that your mesh is going to break for a known reason. So, as a project, we try to avoid changes that introduce backwards incompatibility. But every now and then we have to make some kind of a change or we catch a regression. So with this command, if you run it before running your upgrade, you can be sure that you catch known issues before, losing traffic in your mesh or something bad happening after the upgrade. So we do have one change, we'll be discussing later, that can be caught with this command. So yeah, and then we also have the revision tag command. So revision tags are pretty cool. It's a UX improvement for revision-based upgrades. So pretty much we have in-place upgrades and revision-based upgrades. For revision-based upgrades, there used to be a lot of manual relabeling, and we'll actually talk about this more on the next slide. Yeah, so the way a revision-based upgrade works, or used to work, is you install 2 control planes side by side instead of just rolling one of them over. And to decide which revision should inject workloads for a given namespace, you would label the namespace with the Istio.io rev label. So when you wanted to use a new revision, you had to go through and relabel all your namespaces, and it was pretty tedious and somewhat error prone. So now you can create what's called a revision tag, and it gives you a stable identifier to label the namespace with. And then you can, instead of changing the label, you just change where the tag points. And magically, all of your namespaces are pointed to the correct revision. And yeah, it gives you a lot more control and makes the Canary upgrade process just a lot easier in general.
Yeah, this is a great feature of Istio 110. And I remember, Sam, you were leading up this work in the community, and many of us participate in the community with providing feedback to you. I think it's tremendous useful for a user to be able to not changing their version and just using a tag. And thanks to Christian to have this nice picture too.
Oh yeah, and then so we also have some injection improvements. So pretty much, if you have looked at older Istio documentation, you've seen we have like a huge table with like, I don't know, 10 rows and 10 columns that, encode the logic of whether a sidecar gets injected. So we've improved this, and I think it's a lot more straightforward now. Pretty much we've added revision labels, so the Istio IO rev label to on the pod level. So now you can, on the per pod basis, decide which revision should inject. And so this is pretty cool. We use it for our upgrade testing internally, and I'm sure you could think of all kinds of ways to use it in your own infrastructure. Pretty much the labels on the namespace take precedence over workload labels, and I think it's somewhat intuitive now. And then we also have gateway injection. So this is a really, really cool feature. And I think technically, actually, it landed in 1.9 in terms of like the implementation was there. But now in 1.10, we have like documentation and use cases showing you how you can take advantage of it. And pretty much, if you've ever tried to upgrade Istio, you know that one of the scariest part is the gateway upgrade, because the gateway deployment in Istio is pretty tightly coupled to the installation. And I think for a lot of users, it's kind of opaque when you try and upgrade. What happens? How does that gateway get upgraded? And with gateway injection, we actually just inject the gateways with the proxy like a normal sidecar gets injected. So you can leverage revision-based upgrade methods with gateways. You can completely customize your gateway deployments with any way you could customize a normal Kubernetes deployment without going through the operator APIs. And I think it's a huge improvement.
Yeah, definitely. Do you want to mention anything on the diagram too, Sam?
Yeah. So sure. This diagram actually kind of shows the current state of things with the injection label changes. So basically, you first look at the namespace labels. Depending on whether there's no label, an enabled label, or a disabled label, you follow the logic. And then you look at the per pod labels. And then after that, you look at auto injection default behavior. And then we actually have a similar kind of flow for revision labels, and it works generally pretty much the same.
That's awesome. It's great to user have this level of controls. With that, we're going to start to show a demo. So I have a Kubernetes cluster in Google Cloud, and this is my cluster. And as you can see, I have a bunch of pods and deployments and services running already. So what I'm going to do next is, let me go ahead, if I can remember what scripts to run. By the way, this is a live demo. It's just we're using scripts to run it. So hopefully the demo gods is with us today. So as you can see, these are my services with 1A3 and Istio Ingress Gateway. I have a bunch of applications running in the Istio in Action namespace. I also have Kayali and some of the observability tools running also on my environment. What we just did was downloading Istio 1.10, and we are extracting it right now. And let's go ahead to check out our Istio Kado version. So as you can see, our Istio Kado is 1.10, but our control plane and data plane is still 1A3. So Sam talked about Istio Kado X precheck. X stands for experimental. So this is a recommended commands that we want you to run before you upgrade to Istio 110. So making sure there's no issue flag. Istio analyzer is another command we also encourage you to run just to analyze to see if there's any resources in your cluster that might be deprecated in 110. So let's go ahead and install our control plane using Istio. So as you can see, we are installing revision 110 of the Istio control plane. Now we just got the CRD. Istio core is essentially the Istio CRD. So we got that installed. Now it's trying to install the Istio D 110.0. This is another new thing that we would love to have you guys tell us the install and upgrade experience by filling out the survey for us. Now let's go ahead and check if my 110 pods are running. As you can see, they are running. And let's go ahead and check if there's any clients connected to Istio 110. Apparently, no. So with that, let's check out the services and the endpoints for 110. As you can see, a bunch of services in my Kubernetes cluster, and some of the services are in the mesh. They are discovered. So the second demo I want to quickly show is to show you how do you upgrade to 110 on the data plane, because what we just done is update to 110 on the control plane, right? So it doesn't mean your data plane is actually also pointing to the new control plane. So let's check out our data plane overall status. As you can see, I have 5 proxies. All of them are running on 183. And on the control plane side, I have both 1.8 and 110. So if you look at the web API, for example, it's one of our deployment, and you can see it's currently running on Istio 183 right now. Now let's check out the labels that Sam talked about, istio.io/rev. As you can see, the Istio in action namespace, which runs the web API service, is tagged with 183. Now we're using the new tag command provided by the Istio commands to say, you know what, I want to set my canary to the new revision Istio 110. And let's start to testing our namespace Istio in action with this new canary tag. So what we are doing is we're going to deploy Istio, the web API canary deployment. The reason we do it with a canary deployment is we want to make sure our web API stays up all the time as part of, deploy a canary version along by the original web API deployment. So if you check the proxy status, you can see, we still have 183. That's because the canary hasn't reached running yet. So now let's test by sending some traffic to the web API server. As you can see, it's successful, but let's check it out in Kayali. So what I'm going to do next is actually to open up this in Kayali. Let me pause it here. Dashboard Kayali. So Kayali requires a token strategy to log in. So what we are going to do is to figure out how do we log into Kayali. So my script is supposed to print out the Kayali token for me, but it didn't. So let me go ahead find out the scripts to do the Kayali token. So this is the script to hopefully print out the Kayali token for me. Oh, I guess maybe my Kayali had an issue. Let me check if my secrets are in there. Okay, so I'm looking at Kayali dashboard. Looks like my Kayali dashboard are not up running. Okay, so I guess we won't be able to see it in Kayali, but let's continue to roll out the deployment. So what we're doing is continue with the Web API Canary. As you can see, the canaries are deleted now. We did roll out the Web API successfully. With the canary comes in and takes some of the traffic, and then after the canary rollout, we also went back to upgrade the Web API for the original deployment. And then after that, we delete the canary version. Now let's go ahead and check out the Web API pod data plane status. As you can see, we've already upgraded to 110. And now if we do Istio cuddle version command, you will be able to see the data plane version is one proxy is updated and the other 4 proxy are still on the 1.8.3 version. Now what we want to do next is we want to upgrade the Istio ingress gateway. So Sam talked about earlier, it's best practice to upgrade Istio ingress gateway separately from the control plane. This is because when the control plane are upgraded, it could also be impacting to the data plane. And you want to really sequence them out because you don't want the control plane and data plane upgraded together. That could cause you probably more outage than if you can sequence them together. So it's really help you to minimize the downtime. So what we're going to do is apply this Istio operator YAML file for the Istio ingress gateway, which is built on top of the empty profile. As you can see, it's going to install the ingress gateway and it just finished it. So what this does is really to upgrading your ingress gateway to pick up the new proxy version. Now, if you do a proxy status on the Istio ingress gateway, you will see we're running on 110 of the Istio ingress gateway. And if we do get the load balancer IP of the Istio ingress gateway, we will be able to send some traffic through the Istio ingress gateway using this command. That concludes the upgrade demo. Let's go back to talk about some of the other exciting features of 110.
Awesome. Thanks for the demo, then. It was awesome.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yes. So we also have some networking changes. So pretty much the way it was before was when traffic makes it to the pod that's running Istio, you have it's going to get forwarded to your application's localhost port. So this has some issues with it because first of all, localhost is meant to be like a secure boundary, and exposing localhost kind of externally is not considered best practices. And also you had to kind of change your application to listen on either all interfaces or just localhost to make things work with Istio. So, you know, we try to make it so that things work right out of the box. Your applications shouldn't have to be modified, you know, to the extent that that's possible. And in 110, it is now the case that when traffic comes into your application, it'll actually be forwarded to the application on the pod IP. So you can listen like you would normally listen. And this is actually really cool for stateful sets and for stateful applications where normally you would be listening on the actual pod IP. Things like Zookeeper would break before. And now things like Zookeeper work right out of the box. And there's a really great blog post discussing this change.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I'm super excited about this feature also. Definitely check out our blog on how this change really impact you from a user perspective. So if you follow this blog, you will be able to learn like how Istio configs the inbound traffic prior to 110. But most importantly, it's really how you actually do this without any configuration changes on your side with 110. So that's really exciting. And also remember Sam talked about definitely use the pre-check command just to help you identify whether this is going to break any of your existing applications in the mesh, because this is a big change. It's really help Istio to match the pod networking behavior of what Kubernetes is, but run the pre-check command, just making sure everything is good. Sam, you want to talk about discovery selectors?
Yeah, sure. So Discover selectors are another really cool feature, made it into 110. It's kind of a performance-based feature. The idea is you can actually choose which namespaces Istio should watch for configuration, like services or endpoints. So by default, it might be surprising to some people, but when you install Istio, it'll watch every resource and every namespace, for its internal registry. And this might not be desired if you have some namespaces that just don't need to be part of the mesh, or you have namespaces that have a lot of churn, like short-running jobs, short-lived things like that. So this provides a way actually to say, hey, only watch for configuration from the namespaces that match these given labels. And then if we go to the next slide, it kind of talks about the relationship between this and sidecars. So sidecar resource is another concept that can help with performance, where IstioD has the control plane still has all of the configuration and it's aware of all of the configuration, but you can scope down what actually gets sent to the per proxy workloads. The discovery selectors kind of act on the layer above, where Istio isn't even aware of the configuration if you configure it not to listen. Yeah, and do you have anything to add to that, Lynn? Because I know Solo had a lot of work on this.
Oh, thanks. I mean, that's perfect. So essentially, discovery selector help you configure what the Istio control plane can watch from the API server, and the sidecar resource really help you refine the visibility of the Istio resources. So we highly recommend you to use them together. Let's go ahead see a demo on that. Two. So this is still my Kubernetes cluster in Google Cloud. As you can see, we're looking at the endpoints of my web API service and deployment in the Istio Action namespace. It's a lot, right, Sam? And let's take a look at the routes. It's also a lot, right? I mean, I only have like maybe 3 or 4 services in the mesh. Honestly, this is way more than what I would expect. So now the question is, how can I configure my Istio control plane to see only what's necessary, right? So what we are doing is enable the Istio injection namespace with Istio discovery enabled. Now, the question I have is, do we also need to label the Istio ingress namespace? The reason is I'm actually deploying my Istio ingress gateway in the Istio ingress namespace. By the way, this is the recommended approach to deploy your Istio ingress gateway in a separate namespace from your Istio control plane. So in this case, the answer is yes, you do need to label that as well. Otherwise, your traffic wouldn't be able to go through from ingress to your service. Now let's go ahead config Istio control plane with discovery selectors. So the discovery selector is a very flexible label schema where you can do still matching labels in this case. Now the question I have for everyone is, can we do this step before labeling the namespace? The answer is no, you don't want to do that. You definitely want to label your namespace first, because the moment you actually enable Istio to install this configuration, you are going to, potentially break your services by changing what the control plane can watch out from Kubernetes API server. So you want to make sure your label is correct, or maybe at least test it thoroughly before you enable this, because this could change a lot of things on your Istio control plane. Now I've upgraded my control plane with the discovery configuration. Now, Sam, can you tell me if it's a lot less data that my web API is seeing?
Yep, that looks like a lot less.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, this is so much easier for people to understand, and it also improve the performance of the sidecar proxy, right, for your microservice like web API in this case. Now, another cool function of Istio 110 is export out all the configurations through Istio commands. This is extremely helpful because if you run into problems with your configuration that you need another person or an expert to take a look, you could potentially produce the output in a JSON file for everything related to this particular web service. And then provide that to your expert team to take a look. This is a really interesting UI provided by one of my coworker, Dini. I really like it because when you have the output.json, you can then instantly look at the particular routes. Like if you're only interested in 8080, you can see all the informations related to that. So it's really helpful for like troubleshooting problems. The other interesting thing we added is to be able to list my revisions, right? To be able to see what are the control planes as part of the revision and be able to describe a particular revision and to see, what are the details for this particular revision. Now, lastly, I just want to show you quickly how many clients I have to connect it to my Istio now. As you can see, I have one sidecar, which we upgraded, is the web API that's connected to my Istio now. So I believe the debug connection is also added new in 110. Is that right, Sam?
Yeah, we added that endpoint because we had something similar for ADSZ, but this is a little bit faster than that to view all the connections.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. So I would like to pass back to you, Sam, to take us through some of the debugging improvements.
Yeah, sure. So this is just kind of a bunch of changes, kind of breeze through here. We have a lot of improvements to external authorization. X.Z is a feature that either landed in 1.9 or 1.8, but it's continually being improved. Pretty much it lets you give an external, designate an external place where you can make authorization decisions. And these improvements kind of just let you, gives you more control over what kinds of headers get sent in the authorization requests, timeouts, that kind of thing. So super useful there. We've added the ability to dry run authorization policies. So this is another really cool one. Pretty much instead of going straight in and creating an authorization policy that affects traffic, you can label it as a dry run policy. And when that policy is triggered, you can actually just see it in Envoy logs rather than it denying traffic. So this is really useful for evaluating your authorization policies in practice. See, in addition, we have Lin actually just showed this, the Istio control, like a whole bunch of Istio control revision commands. So just commands to give more visibility on what control plane revisions are running in your cluster, what components are enabled for each of those revisions, that kind of thing. So super nice to have as revisions become the recommended upgrade method and as they make it to a more and more stable place. So we've added an option to dump all proxy configs. So I guess before you had to specify if you just wanted endpoints or clusters and you kind of had to aggregate them yourself. Now you can just dump it all in one go, and kind of a lot of the time that's exactly what you want to do. So really useful. I guess you could use this and put it right on the Envoy UI that Lin showed and immediately get some insight. And then, yeah, the internal debug command, this is really cool. So Istio D, by default, the control plane has a debug endpoint. You can go to it now if you port forward to your Istio D instance and hit 8080. This pretty much gives a secure way to access those debug endpoints. And this is, again, this is kind of like an internal implementation stuff, but sometimes it's really useful if you're trying to drill in deep and figure out what's going on with your control plane. In addition, we have the experimental telemetry API that landed in 110. Lin and I are actually trying to figure out where the documentation on this is, but it's a really cool feature. It's going to be pretty much the way to configure telemetry going forward. Yeah, do you have anything to add, Lin?
Yeah, I think the API is in the API repository. It's only for the metrics though. So the tracing, the log API are not available yet, but the metrics API are experimental. So we definitely want you guys to take a look and let us know any feedback you may have. So if you go to the telemetry one, you'll be able to see the API right there. We're going to work with the Istio community to make sure the documentation also lands in Istio.io. Yeah, so with that, this is great. Thank you, Sam, to take us through all the different features. With that, I think we are open up for question and answer. One thing I want to mention is we do have a poll. I probably should said it earlier, but just let us know. It's more about how long have you been using Istio and what version of Istio are you running today? So just to get some idea on that for us. And then if you have any questions, do let us know through the chat. I'm not sure if, I don't think you can talk though. So, but you should be able to mention, ask us anything in the chat.
Let's see. It looks like there are already a few questions that got asked during the presentation. So Satish asked, our deployment is based on operator. Is updating tag and reapplying of operator deployment enough? So assuming you're talking about the revision tag stuff, you should be able to do that just fine with if you're using the operator deployment. Behind the scenes, it actually just uses a mutating webhook. And if that webhook is created through the tag command, it shouldn't matter how Istio is deployed. So it should just work.
Yeah, I agree. So just making sure, Sam, I do think he's asking, his Istio is using like operator controller. So it's like there is a Istio operator that watches the Istio operator.yaml file. And I don't think the tag actually needs any change on the control plane other than just having the 110, right? It doesn't have like special flag. You have to enable this in 110.
No, yeah, there's no special flag.
Yeah, exactly. So should definitely work. Yeah, agree. I think Klaus was asking about share the slide deck. Absolutely, we will. We will also make the recording out too. And Abby, thanks for saying that Istio 110 makes the stateful set nightmare disappear. Totally agree. I know I was so frustrated like a year or two ago. The moment I run Zookeeper with Istio, my Zookeeper died. So thanks for that feedback. We really appreciate it. Oh, and also your GraphQL cluster too. So makes sense. That's another stateful set. Now, Christian also had a question. Is discovery selector only available for Istio operator? Can it be used with Istio Cuddle? So if you remember my demo, I actually use it with Istio Cuddle. So the answer is yes, you can definitely use with Istio Cuddle. The only thing I showed with Istio operator was the YAML file. So I do have the Istio, so it's a control plane with the discovery YAML file. So this YAML file, you can take it deploy with Istio Cuddle. You can also take it to deploy with server-side operator controller. So either approach should work. I believe Helm should work. I just haven't personally tested. Okay, let us know if you have any other questions. If not, I'm actually going to ask Sam a question. If that's okay, Sam.
Yeah, of course.
So I want to ask you this question. So remember how I showed this demo? By the way, this is the script I was just run, right? So when I show this demo, when I upgrade my Istio Ingress Gateway, which I can show you what it looks like. So it's basically pretty just empty profile with Istio Ingress Gateway. So my question to you, Sam, is in this case, I'm using revision 1.10.0. Can I change that to revision Canary, given I use tag to say Canary point to 1.10.0 earlier?
I don't know. I don't believe you can use the revision tag there.
Yeah.
And that's kind of an unfortunate thing, is there are some commands where we haven't made it so that you can use the tag everywhere you can use a revision. However, when you're using gateway injection to install the gateway, tags will work fine. But I believe here the tag would not work because it just gets pointed straight to that revision for the control plane when it's trying to reach out.
Yeah, you are absolutely right. I actually tried it. It doesn't work. So this is an interesting thing. Yeah, with the gateway injection coming in Istio 1.10, it does make sense to just using the tag with like treating Istio gateway as a normal workload, so we can just use tag there. The reason I didn't show Istio gateway injection in my demo is I haven't been able to get it work. So the documentation PR has not merged to Istio.io. So we are looking forward to get that working for you guys really soon, so you guys can explore and provide feedback, because we really love that feature and we want to enable that feature as default, maybe in a few releases down the road based on your feedback. So definitely try it after the PR documentation merges, after I got it working, and provide us the feedback. Okay, looks like Christian is typing. So let's see if he has another question. So let us know if you have any questions. If not, we'll probably just close this out in a minute or two. Hey, Sam, I want to say thank you so much for doing this webinar with me. It's been really fun.
Yeah, no, thank you for inviting me and for having me. I love talking about Istio, so yeah.
Yes, same here. I guess we share a similar passion.
Yeah, it's nice talking about Istio to other people who also care about Istio, because a lot of the time
that
people
is
don't.
True. Yeah, that is true. If we can connect to where they are today, most people do care about Istio. Yeah.
Yep,
Okay,
yeah.
with that, I guess we're going to close out this webinar. Thank you all for joining us, and thank you, Sam, again for joining us on this webinar. And we will be back in touch with the slides and recording. Thank you all.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks. Bye now.